Hi guys, is it possible for the Tories to be honest about anything? So as predicted, the Conservatives have moved on from attacking Labour over the winter fuel allowance back to territory they believe that's good for them: immigration. So as Keir Starmer meets with far-right Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni to discuss how to stop the boats, former Tory ministers are fibbing about the Rwanda scheme once again. After costing almost £750 million and sending less than half a dozen people to the African nation on a voluntary basis, Shadow Prime Minister and Tory MP Matt Vickers claims a lot of countries in Europe want to copy the Conservatives' now dumped plan. But there's a problem with that.
We had a scheme in place that was going to ship people out. They were going to be removed and processed abroad. And actually, on day one, the Labour Party ditched that. It's a scheme that 19 countries across the EU are now trying to mimic. They want a piece of it. They thought it was going to work. They thought it was valuable. They thought this was the solution to what is a huge international problem. And we've now seen the Germans looking at taking up the facilities that we built in Rwanda to take care of these people when they arrived there.
Right.
It's scary that he ditched it on day one.
May I ask you this, please? How many?
Okay, it's lie upon lie upon lie upon lie. So, first of all, he says, well, we had this scheme and it was going to send people to Rwanda. I think it was 4 or 5 people, less than half a dozen, went to Rwanda. Now, were they deported? No, they went on a voluntary basis. It was meant to be a deterrent. It was meant to stop people from coming in. When the Conservatives were in power, it wasn't working. You know, they kept saying, look, just give it more time and it will work. No, they were in power and it was not working. It was not a deterrent. The numbers were not decreasing. The numbers crossing the channel were decreasing in respect to the weather, but the Rwanda scheme was not deterring people from coming to Britain. So it was not working. Now, another point, he says, well, you know, this accommodation that we had bought, this accommodation was sold off by the Rwandan government because they have a housing crisis, I believe. So they need to sell off property. You know, what's the point in having all this property available that nobody is eventually going to be put in? Another failure of the Rwanda scheme was that it was capped on the Rwandan side. The Rwandan government said, we're not going to take in 50,000 people. And even if they were, it was not a safe country. That was the crux of the problem here. The Supreme Court said Rwanda is not a safe place to send people. Now, Vickers also mentioned, well, European countries want a bit of this as well. And he also mentioned Germany. I'll get to Germany in a moment. But other countries, no, they don't want a bit of this, because the difference between offshore processing and the Rwanda scheme was that offshore processing, which I'm not an advocate of, definitely not, I think it's the wrong approach, but the difference is that asylum seekers are processed in those offshore sites. If they're successful, they are returned to the country that sent them there in the first place. So, for example, in the case of Italy, some people are being sent to Albania. They're being processed in Albania by Italian officials. If they're successful, they return to Italy. If they're unsuccessful, they return to their home country or they stay in Albania. That's the agreement. That's not what Rwanda was about. Rwanda was sending people to Rwanda to be forgotten about. They were not going to Rwanda to be processed for the British government. They were being sent to Rwanda to be processed for Rwanda. So if somebody was successful in their asylum claim in Rwanda, they would stay in Rwanda. If they were unsuccessful, they would stay in Rwanda, more than likely. That's the difference. And most European countries are not trying to emulate that because there are massive problems with that. It's against human rights. And finally, when it comes to Germany, Germany is not buying up this property. If you look at it, it seems to stem from an MP in the German parliament, from the junior coalition government. So a single guy in the German government was saying, maybe we should have a look at the Rwanda scheme. That's it. Germany has not opened negotiations with Rwanda. There isn't a plan to copy the Rwanda scheme. But even if there were, let's say for the sake of argument, the German government wants to have something like Rwanda, it would still be offshore processing. It would still be the case of sending people to Rwanda to be processed, and if they're successful, they would return to Germany. It's not like what James cleverly described as something that I can't repeat on YouTube. So we're back to just fib, misinform the public and hope for the best. That seems to be the new Tory plan. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.